This episode is presented by Brex, the financial stack founders can bank on. Learn more at brex.com/techcrunch24. Tennis is really having a moment. If challengers inspired you to pick up a racket, then you should know how tedious it can be to pick up hundreds of tennis balls after a training session.
You're listening to Found, TechCrunch's podcast that brings you the stories behind the startups. And today we're talking to Haitham Eletrabi, the co-founder and CEO of Tennibot, a company that has designed a robot to pick up tennis balls autonomously. I'm Becca, and here to talk about using tennis Roombas is my amazing co-host,
Dominic Midori Davis. And of course, before we get into our conversation, we have our two truths and a lie, so listen carefully. At the end, we'll tell you which one of these statements isn't true. Is a lie that the Tennibot team plays tennis together every week, that the company's first two hires were still in college, or that Haitham was a competitive tennis player as a kid?
Ooh, you'll have to keep listening to find out. But before you do, if you would please rate and review the show, you can do so wherever you are already listening to this episode, and we would greatly appreciate it. But here is our conversation with Haitham. Hi, Haitham. How's it going?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Oh, I am good. I am excited about this one because, like Maggie, our producer, I have also been getting more into tennis as of late. So I was really excited to talk to you about this one. So I think, why don't we get started by you telling us a little bit about Tennibot?
Sure. Thanks, Becca and Dom, for having me again. Tennibot's an autonomous tennis assistant for sports. Our flagship product, Tennibot, the easiest way to describe it visually is Roomba for tennis. It runs around the courts, picking up balls so that players and coaches saving them up to 30% of their time doing what they enjoy, which is hitting balls rather than picking up balls, and spending this time wisely with their students or improving certain shots they have, like the serve, which is typically the weakest shot for a lot of tennis players. If you play tennis, you were just saying, you probably noticed this already.
Oh, yes. But I must ask you, what got you interested in this space to begin with? Why did you decide to build this? What got you interested in building in the tennis space?
Let me give you a little bit background story first. So my mom and dad grew up watching a lot of tennis, and they wanted my younger sister to be the next Steffi Graf. Spoiler alert, didn't work. She loved playing tennis, but she hated the running back and forth all the time around the court. So I was her hitting partner before and after the tennis lessons, and that allowed me to actually get introduced to the sport. And then fast forward, when I was finishing up my undergrad civil engineering in Cairo University in Egypt, I was reintroduced to the sport. Then I came to the US to get my PhD in civil engineering at Auburn University. Fell in love with it all over again. Whenever I wasn't doing research, I was out in the court playing tennis, volunteering for tennis events, and helping younger and new players getting into the sport. But I always hated picking up tennis balls. It was always frustrating for me. Whether I'm practicing serve, hitting with a ball machine, or taking a lesson, spending that time picking up balls was always frustrating for me. So I was trying to solve a problem for myself, and this is how it was born.
And I'm curious, once you realized that this was a problem you wanted to spend time working to solve, build a product to kind of fix the issue, was this your first idea? Or what was it like actually going from having that idea, oh, I want to find a way to make it easier to pick up these tennis balls, to actually creating the little robot that you guys were able to create?
Great question. So initially, like I said, I was trying to solve a problem for myself. So initially, I wanted to buy something. There was nothing out there. I did a lot of research. Every single solution out there is manual and involved me stop playing tennis to pick up the balls. So I got basically a small RC car, started retrofitting it to pick up balls, and I started enjoying the experience. Every time I take it to the court, people would come over and say, oh, where did you buy this from? Oh, that's great. Did you build this? And started hearing this over and over. So around that same time, a professor of mine introduced me to my co-founder, Lincoln. He was finishing up his master's in control systems and robotics. We hit it off. And then we applied to CES, Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas, went over there, Eureka Park, and everybody stopped by the booth and said, oh my God, I wasted so much of my life picking up tennis balls. Can I buy this? This is the only one I have. It was that old one behind me, by the way, this yellow and black Tennibot. And I told them, no, this is the only one I have. They said, it's okay, I'll buy it. I thought, no, I can't give it to you. This is the only one I have. So I started saying, okay, clearly there's an issue for other people, not just for me. So this is when we went back to Auburn and started building, and fast forward, now here we are.
That's so interesting that you started with an RC car. I love that. And I was watching a video of you guys using the product earlier, and it looks like you guys did go through a couple of design iterations before landing on the one you're on now. What was that like, and what worked, what didn't, and how were you able to figure out what made the most sense?
So we started first. The first basic problem was, okay, it need to pick up balls. Then it need to pick up a lot of balls. Then it need to pick up balls reliably on every surface, because you are basically building an autonomous outdoor robot. It's not going 80 miles an hour down the highway, but you're still dealing with a lot of variables. The lighting, the surface of the court, the status of the ball, how many people on the court, dealing every court obviously have white lines, but how obscure those white lines. So we started first by focusing on the first problem, picking up tennis balls reliably and picking up a lot of balls in a short amount of time. And then started dealing with finding its own navigation on the court, how it finds its location. You cannot use expensive LiDARs, or you can't use any kind of system that will take the budget out of reasonable use case. So we used visual odometry, where we're having the station, tracking the rover, finding its location on the court. Next step, how to deal with fences. Every fence is different. You have wooden fence, wire fence, concrete fences. Dealing with them and being able to pick up balls there, because at the end of the day, most of the balls end up at the fence. So that's why we kept iterating and improving one version after the other.
Do you have any funny failed product design stories?
I think one thing is, I think we started early days. We started with two rollers kind of technique, because we were trying to simulate what you would see in a baseball machine. I don't know how funny that was, but the idea is noticing very quickly that, okay, this will only work if you are picking very few balls. Once you start dealing with a control system of having a lot of balls going through it, was not going to work out at scale. So this is when we switched to one roller mechanism, and we're able to iterate with the material to make sure it can handle wide range of balls and a very high speed.
I also loved hearing about all the work that goes into building a product like this, because now I'm really intrigued to know, are there different iterations of this product depending on the surface of the court? Like I'm sure picking up balls on like grass is probably a bit harder than doing clay court or hard court.
100%. So we wanted something that exactly can deal with this situation, that every surface is slightly different, but we wanted someone like me, for example. I play tennis on clay court and hard court all the time. I switch back and forth, depends on availability and kind of conditions. Is it raining that day? Is it not raining? Is it indoor? Is it outdoor? So we wanted something that you would be able to use on every surface. Up until recently, we knew it works on clay and hard court, no problem. Grass is what we finally was able to validate recently, because there's not much grass courts around where we live within 250-mile radius. But we're able to go to a tennis court finally in Boston a couple of months ago and test it on a couple of their grass courts, and it worked great. So we were able to manage to get it to work on different surfaces, the same product. Yeah, it was very tricky, but obviously getting it there was a big win.
And I love these kind of products where it's like you're using really complex AI algorithms, using computer vision, and it's like it's picking up tennis balls. It's solving this fun consumer issue that's just like a total annoyance for anyone who does play the sport. But what was it like training the models? Because tennis balls, courts, all this stuff like we've talked about, it can be a whole variety of different things, but at the same time, there are a lot of similarities. Like tennis balls are usually the same size, or like most of them are the same color. What was it like actually training the computer vision for this?
So we start first by obviously a couple of small data points just to get the basic model going, understanding this actually works. There's no major issues. We are not missing anything. And once we started seeing this early success, we started saying, okay, we need to actually collect a lot of data. So we started actually getting a lot of data ourselves everywhere we travel, but also sending the station a lot of places to several friends around the country, including Denver, California, New York, and having them collect data for us in different tennis courts, different conditions, different times of the day, afternoon, evening, right after it rained in Florida versus a very dry weather up in Arizona, and collecting all those data, different ball distributions of the court. Like you said, most of them are the same, but still when the ball is dead is versus when it's fresh out of a can, and being able to collect all this data. So that was extremely helpful for us to be able to build a robust model based on all this data in different places and different times.
I gotta know, what is it like you guys reaching out to these different courts and being like, hey, can we have our robot come and like drive around and test out your court in Arizona or in Florida? Like, what was that like? Like, that sounds so funny to have the bird eye view of you guys doing that.
It's fun. So obviously we were there in a lot of times, but sometimes we will ship it to a friend and have them go there and collect data. And the tennis director or tennis coach in the place is always happily surprised by it, because they either heard of it like, oh yeah, I seen a video of this, or like, oh, that's really cool. Or did you guys taking orders? Or when can I order one? Do you go for a group discount? And some folks never seen it before. This is always a funny one, because they were like, so what does this do? And then they explain to them, or we explain to them, it picks up ball while you're playing. Then yeah, I said, wow, I always wanted to build something like this. I can't tell you how many times we heard I always wanted to build something like this, because for them the problem is very clear. Yeah.
And wait, I feel like I have to ask because now I'm like imagining it in my head. So does it also take into consideration where people are on the court? Because I imagine if you're like running really fast, you're about to hit a backhand down the line, but the little tennis Roomba is there. Like, is it going to run away? Or does it not know that someone is like coming full speed at it?
Great question. So a couple of things. First, obviously, you can set on the app a restricted zone. Second, most of the use cases you put in the other side of the court because they're practicing. So they're hitting with a ball machine is behind the ball machine, or practicing with a coach is behind the coach, or practicing serve, so it's on the other side. But it also have obviously sensors on it to try to stay away from you. But again, we recommend that when you're using it for practice. It's on the other side of the court.
That would be so funny if there was like a little scream that came out while it's like zooming away. That'd be kind of funny, like a little grunt, a tennis grunt or something. I don't know. That'd be.
Yeah, I love that. What it has, because I know you've mentioned already that talking to different people about this product, people definitely recognize the pain point. People definitely seem like they want to purchase something like this or wish this existed. What is demand actually translated like into sales or into these partnerships? What has demand been like? Or what stage are you guys at? Are people like, could I go on and buy this today?
So we just started taking orders 2 months and a half ago. So we did a Kickstarter a while ago just to validate, okay, before we spend a lot of time and energy trying to build this, is there somebody cares or is this only few people? So we reached our goal in a couple of hours and then we tripled our goal by the end of the campaign. And then we went head down, started building and going through different iterations of the product. 2 months ago, we just started taking orders and shipping backlog. And several times we had to turn off the buy button on the website, turn off ads. We were doing some customer acquisition testing, turn off ads because we can't keep up with orders and we want to make sure we get it out to the customers in a timely manner. So yeah, definitely we have been very pleased by the interest in the product and how people realize and understand right away. Not only this, we've seen customers, some of the people who got their Tennibot, they come back and try to order more. We always expected repeat customers from B2B, like clubs, academies, resorts, right. But from individuals, it was a little bit of a surprise. Why? So I would jump on a call like, hey, I noticed you just placed another order. Why? Something wrong with your Tennibot? They say, no, I just have another house in Florida. I don't want to keep lugging it back and forth. Or my brother-in-law or my sister-in-law saw it and really like it, and I wanted to get them as a gift. So it was very cool seeing those repeat orders from individuals and tennis players.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because it definitely seems like, especially like a tennis club, I used to play at a local tennis club in high school, and I could just see why they would want this. There's like 6 courts. You could just have it going in the background as you moved around. But it sounds like you guys are getting a lot of interest from individuals too. Were you guys expecting that, or were you thinking it was going to be more on the B2B side?
We always kind of knew it will be a lot of individuals as well because we were building it for ourselves as individual tennis players as well in mind. So it's very portable. We needed to make sure it fits in almost every trunk. At that time, when we first started, I was driving a Honda Civic Hybrid and I needed to make sure it fits in my trunk. So we made it very compact and portable and it fits in small spaces so people can transport it easily. A lot of customer profiles you are seeing are folks who either own a ball machine, practice regularly with a ball machine, take 1 or 2 lessons a week, and just kind of serious about enjoying their time on the court, playing more tennis and getting better with the sport. So that's something we hoped for, and we were lucky to see this actually the case.
I mean, I feel like a lot of tech people play stuff like, I don't know, tennis and racquetball, all the little ball sports. And also all the tennis events are like society staple events now. And so I want to know, what has it been like pitching investors for this? I imagine they have to understand the need.
Yeah, for sure. We were fortunate enough to get some amazing investors early on, like Techstars, Benson Capital, Untapped Capital, Underdog Labs. And one in particular is close to our heart is Helen Grenier, the iRobot co-founder. She's the one who invented the Roomba out of the 90s, out of MIT. She met us in a CES, funny enough, and she stopped by the booth. I didn't recognize her right away. I knew of her, but I didn't recognize her. And then she stopped by the booth. She said, this is like Roomba for tennis. I told her, yeah, this is actually how we describe it to people. And then she introduced herself. She ended up coming in as an investor and mentor and was super crucial in helping us avoid those pitfalls for robotics companies and AI companies early days. So definitely super helpful. And yes, to answer your question, a lot of folks who play tennis, they understand the problem we're solving, they understand the need themselves, experience the pain point, so it makes it very straightforward conversation rather than try to converse them about some things they never experienced before.
And I definitely want to ask you, because you always hear from venture investors, or some venture investors, I should say, of course, that they're like, if you start off on like a Kickstarter or a crowdfunding site, it's hard to transition to VC, or like VCs aren't going to be interested. But of course, I mean, time and time again, that's proven wrong.
Of course.
But I'm curious if you want to talk about what that was like and pitching investors with that sort of background that the company had. You guys did raise money in this way. How do you navigate that? Because obviously Kickstarter money is super different from getting money from investors. How do you navigate all of that?
So I think the way we framed it was we always discussed how this explain and help us show the demand and the traction and show that, we are not convincing them about a concept or a project. No, there is actually the product exists. At the time, the prototype, and now the product, and then the customer, the demand for it, the pain point solving. So I think a lot of them, like you said earlier in the previous question, who actually play tennis, they understand, okay, why we went this route. We wanted to validate demand just to give us a comfort and peace of mind that we are solving a problem for people. And that Kickstarter and all the orders that came after that proved that pain point for them.
And I know from looking into the product a little bit, the main job that this does is it picks up the tennis balls for the players. But I know it also tracks how many balls people are doing, like how often people are practicing, and sort of has some of those other little features built in as well. And I'm curious if you want to talk about like why it made sense to add those types of features on top of this. Do you guys anticipate expanding or adding other features like that to like help tennis players track more parts of their game?
I'm glad you asked this question because it was entirely built, all those features, on user feedback. So initially, when we released it, it was picking up balls and we were happy with it. Everyone is excited about it. But then we started getting several coaches and players saying, man, this thing can clean my clay court and sweep it for me. I'll buy it specifically for that purpose, because being able to sweep the clay court after every match, it doesn't matter. If you're playing a match or practicing, you have to sweep the clay court. And if it's a tennis coach standpoint, a lot of them, they either ask their players to do it, which they dread, or they do it themselves and waste them time. So we added the simple sweeper at the back of the Tennibot. Same thing with the station. A lot of customers and players will be saying, okay, those cameras, are they tracking me? Or them, it's tracking the rover. I'll tell them it's tracking the rover. And they will say, oh, wow, can it also track us? And adding this feature is straightforward. The hard part with the robot, the autonomous navigation, tracking the players is fairly straightforward. So we started getting a lot of requests for this. So we started adding those features step by step. And we continue to push over-air updates to improve the product for the new folks who already have it and anybody else who buy it moving forward. So yeah, we continue to build basically on those feature lists. And obviously, we are thinking about expanding into several other products in the pipeline. The most straightforward one is the other racket sports. We get almost on a weekly request for paddle version and for pickleball version. And that's what will be in the pipeline. We'll be working on releasing in the near future.
Yeah, I was going to say there's so many things this could kind of lean well to. I mean, this would be different because this involves ice, but like hockey pucks and things like that. Like I definitely see picking up any kind of thing like this is always super annoying, kind of no matter the sport.
That's correct. And with something we were fortunate with early on, when we started applying for our first couple of patents, one of our mentors actually suggested we don't go target the picking up tennis balls specifically, but any round object. We weren't sure if we were going to get the patent, but luckily enough, we ended up getting now over 16 patents in US, Europe, Australia, Canada, and all of those covering any round object. So opens up doors for us to expand into other products.
What was the patent process like? I'm always so curious because it sounds, you're laughing implies it sounds like it's going to be an interesting experience. But, but like, what is that like? Some people, it's like relatively straightforward. Other people, it's not. It takes time. It's hard to navigate. Like, what was it like getting the patents for this?
Yeah, definitely was very fortunate that one of our very first mentors, who was actually very versed in the patent space, because he himself got several patents for different products and applications. So he was very helpful in helping us with anything from the provisional patent, the process, where to go, introducing us after that to a patent lawyer who will basically go with us over the drafting, discussing the claims, discussing the description. So I would say it's definitely a long and tedious process, but if you have the right person to help, it changes the experience totally. Yeah. So we're very fortunate having that mentor helping us throughout this process, and then very fortunate with our IP lawyer, who is very smart and sharp and able to, you know what, this one give you coverage, but this claim will be even better. Let's see what happens with that claim. And then we go through it, and then they go through the examiner, and then the examiner comes back and tell you, I don't know about this. Then you push back. Then they say, okay, sounds good, makes sense. But obviously, after the first 3-4 patents, you start getting the gist of the process.
And I wanted to ask you, because this is now the second person you've brought up like an early investor that you've worked with that has been like really instrumental in helping you with these different aspects? Like the inventor of the Roomba helping you kind of like avoid the pitfalls of these small little robotic devices, and then this with the patent side. And it's so interesting to hear you talk about this, especially, I mean, you've probably seen all the stuff in the last few weeks about like founder mode and how like you have to be like grind, and you have to like figure everything out on your own. And like that's like the best way to approach it. But it sounds like luck isn't necessarily the right word, but you've been able to be fortunate to have these people who are experts in this area help you guys. And how much do you think that's made a difference in the progress you guys have made so far, being able to work with these people so early on?
I can tell you with confidence that we wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for them. It takes a village, and literally it was crucial and influential at every step in the process. Having those right folks who are very interested in the product, love the team, love what you are doing, and just want to help you succeed. Whether it is, like you said earlier, with the robotics side, or with the patent and IP side, or with the business going through Techstars. For example, it was very influential for us having a great managing director like Jordan and Andrew, and having them helping us navigate this process, going from, we're building a robot, into, no, it's a robotics AI company that's building robots for sports, and how you navigate this next phase of growth, and how do you deal with hiring, and how do you deal with management and leadership, and all the stuff you learn. Obviously, it was our first rodeo, so we are learning as we go, but having those mentors and investors in place that help you navigate those waters was instrumental for us.
More from this conversation right after a quick break.
This episode is presented by Brex, the financial stack founders can bank on. Brex knows cash is king for startups, so they built a banking experience that takes every dollar further. Unlike traditional business banking solutions, Brex has no minimums and no transaction fees, and you can get 20 times the standard FDIC protection. Even better, you can earn industry-leading yields from your first dollar while still being able to access your funds anytime. Get the business account trusted by 1 in 3 US startups at brex.com/techcrunch24. So basically, when you started 6 years ago, I imagine AI and robotics was kind of different, the industry, the sector. And like, we're obviously in the midst of like some AI revolution right now. I want to know, I guess, how innovation has changed in the past 6 years and how that's impacted your product. Because I imagine the first iteration of the product was quite different versus what it is now, granted with all the innovation that's taken place in robotics and hardware and AI.
Correct. You're definitely right. It changed, first of all, the perspective. A lot of time, early days, you're like, what are you? You're building a robot. And back then, you wouldn't hear the term AI. There was a lot of machine learning back then.
Right.
You would hear often. And then there was obviously a lot of resistance. It's like, why don't you just build a SaaS? Or like, why build a tough product like a deep tech or robotics or, like I said, a machine learning or AI product? Obviously, we've been fortunate to live through that revolution, not just with AI, even robotics, like in some of your guests in the previous episodes we're talking about. Like now, there's a lot of bigger and a more open appetite for it because they see the application. For us, it's straightforward because the product is solving a problem. I'm not building a robot just for the sake of technology. We are addressing a certain pain point for customers. So that was something that definitely helped. But over the years, you started seeing more and more openness from investors and mentors and even partners looking at this like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I have my Roomba, it does that. And I have that other robot do this. And looking at autonomous vehicle, which is basically a form of a robot out there. So it's becoming more and more acceptance towards this kind of technology and startup. Now, the second part about the product, yes, definitely the innovation helps us a lot with improving the parts, whether it is the performance or it is the size or the form factor, what goes under the hood, so to speak, of the Tennibot, and being able to deliver this value at a reasonable price point and intuitive behavior from the customer. So definitely we benefited a lot from the trajectory and the change in innovation and the sensors and a lot of the obviously processing powers that exist now for consumer products.
Just to follow up with that, because I know that IBM is doing a lot of work with like AI in tennis as the sponsor of like, I think Wimbledon and the US Open, like they're doing like the player matchabilities and all those things. How do you see AI further impacting tennis? Like, is there much more that can be done aside from like player matchability, or like, where do you see kind of the opportunities for AI to really enhance the tennis game?
I agree. I think not just tennis, honestly, all racket sports, because they are exploding obviously in popularity right now, tennis, paddle, pickle, and all of this. one of the fastest growing sports group in the US and the world, having robotics, technology, AI, and whether it is user experience from a player or coach, or even from fan engagement, like you mentioned the Microsoft and IBM example, having this kind of stats for a lot of the tennis fans that they didn't have access to before. Now we are watching, or back when we used to watch Roger Federer play, there is a specific amount of stats that was available versus now watching Sinner playing, and you see the amount of sets, how many forehand and in and out, and where was his position on the court. As a lot of folks who are into data and tech, they will be even more excited to know all that stuff. And this is even from the fan standpoint. From a player standpoint, there's a lot of obviously solutions out there, and I think you continue to see solutions that was successful in other sports being implemented in tennis and other racket sports.
And something you kind of just mentioned it too, and Dom mentioned it a bit earlier. Not that tennis and things like that weren't popular always. They always were. But pickleball exploded during COVID. It seems like I went to the US Open this year. I went for the first time in 2021, and the difference in how crowded it was, how many people there were, like how much of an affair it was very, very noticeable. And it seems like people have gotten increasingly interested in this space. And challengers came out this year, which a lot of people got more interested in tennis because of that. How do you guys anticipate being able to keep up with that sort of cultural moment? Because when you guys started, of course, it just wasn't the same landscape as it is now. Yeah. And if it continues to grow and popular, like how do you guys think about keeping up with demand or sort of changing as the game is going through this big moment right now?
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned this. Actually, US Open had the highest attendance record in history this year.
I don't doubt it.
Yeah, so it's definitely getting more and more popular. We are addressing and getting in the stage of, okay, we went through the stages of as a startup, validating the demand, production, going through reliability testing of the product. We had a torture chamber downstairs where we were running the balls continuously through the intake to make sure it can pass 1 million mark of balls being picked up. And now we started shipping. We are talking with the city of Auburn here about potentially expanding our HQ because we are running out of place downstairs, growing the team over the next couple of weeks. We are opening a new round to be able to hire more folks in the team and continue to deliver into those products in the pipeline. So definitely it's a great moment, and that shift in the landscape, we are feeling it directly because we are seeing the interest in the sport, and by the definition, an interest into players and coaches trying to keep up with the technology and to offer value, whether to their players or for themselves. Like you mentioned, a lot of those folks have a busy schedule and busy time, so they want to be able to maximize their practice and enjoy their time on the court.
And I have to ask you, because this is such a fun product, your story of how you got interested in tennis is so interesting to me. And did you ever think, one, you'd be an entrepreneur, but two, you'd be an entrepreneur building a tennis robot? What did you think you were going to do when you completed your studies? How do you think about that now that this is what you're working on? And like, this is like the job, the passion. I love it. I'm curious.
Thank you so much. No, definitely very, very fortunate. The path, the trajectory I was on was I was going to finish up my PhD and then I either get in academia or do some consulting work or work as an engineer, but never had I planned to become basically an entrepreneur. It wasn't like something you think about or something that you would consider, or specifically tennis entrepreneur. So definitely it just worked this way just because I was trying to solve a problem for myself. And even initially, like I was saying, I wasn't even trying to build a company. I was just trying to solve a problem for myself. And seeing all those people excited about it, that would actually trigger that chain of events. But definitely very fortunate working on a cool product with cool team and folks you enjoy working with every day. And like I said, we keep joking a lot of times that while part of our testing or collecting data is going to the court, playing tennis, having fun, getting this kind of information and data that's needed for improving the product every day, it's a very fortunate place to be in.
Yeah, that is funny to think about. You're not like running disaster scenarios through like a SaaS product. You're like, let's go hit some balls on the court and see if this works. Like, that definitely sounds like a better deal.
Exactly.
And what has it been like building out the company and hiring? You mentioned meeting your co-founder when he was finishing up his master's, but was he interested in tennis? Like, do you notice you guys get a lot of people applying to the company who are just like really interested in the sport to begin with? What is it like hiring for this and getting people involved?
Yeah, Lincoln was definitely a tennis player. He was really getting into it. Unrelated to Tennibot, he was just getting really into the sport. So when our professor introduced us, it was a instant chemistry, and we all the time hang out outside the work. We play tennis doubles. We don't play against each other. We always play together double, and we play pickleball, play table tennis. So we hang out a lot outside work, and play different sports. But hiring and growing the company, obviously part of it was learning process, because even though you have mentors and investors and folks who help guide you, at the end of the day, there is learning going through the process. Initially, we were very clear that we wanted people who are nice, kind, smart, interested in the product. This is not just a job. That's someone who have to be passionate about what we're building, whether from a robotics angle or from a tennis angle. So we were fortunate that we had this early group that helped set the mood from the beginning, that everyone is kind, everyone is smart, everyone is really interested in this. So they are really working hard toward it. Like one of the episodes I was listening to, they need to care. If they don't care, kind of kills the vibe and the excitement around it. You need people like, oh my God, you know what? I am really excited about testing this feature. Or like, how about we try this? And then we go out, test it. And then we collect some data. And then we talk with some customers. And this kind of iterative mindset allowed us to address and handle a fairly hard and complex technological problem, even though in a fun form factor of a robot that picks up tennis balls, by going at it every day and being excited about it. But yeah, we run a very flat organization. Everyone's communicating with everyone, and we don't have a lot of rigid structured meeting, a lot of impromptu meetings. People just stop by someone's desk and chit chat and ask. We use a project management platform like Basecamp to communicate and share data. So we love the flatness of the organization, how everyone is just enjoying what they're doing.
Yeah, who was the first hire you made? I guess aside from you and your co-founder, like what was your first hire?
David, our first mechanical hire. He was in college and he was working on his bachelor degree in mechanical engineering. And I remember when we first met him, it was in a job fair, like a university job fair. And he was saying, I'm interested in joining in the summer. I thought, let's get started right away and see what happens. And then once he started working with us, fast forward a couple of years later, he finished with us, graduated, and have been working with us. And now he's leading the mechanical engineering team.
That is so interesting, actually. Like, what year in school was he?
I can't remember. I think like sophomore or junior, he joined us, and we started seeing this happening. Like the second mechanical guy we hired Ben. He was finishing up his bachelor degree. He had one semester left. He joined us as an intern, and then after graduation, said, "Would love to continue working at Tennibot." We told him, "Would love to have you," and then he joined the team. We've seen this over and over happening. It's just starting early and having folks who are really excited about this. And it's funny because not only we work together, we take tennis lessons every Monday. We hang out after work on Fridays. So everyone is really in that tennis robotics mood.
That is interesting to think about because you rarely hear of companies hiring people in that way who have not finished school. But at the same time, it's like then our industry also praises the founders who drop out of school and like don't finish and stuff like that. So like it sounds interesting to think about, but I'm like, wait, that actually makes a lot of sense because we're talking about founders in that way as it is.
100%. Not to mention, you still have access to amazing experienced mentors and consultants and folks who have wealth of knowledge. So when you combine those two together, magic happens.
And I'm curious what you mentioned with it being more of like a flat organization. Was that intentional or sort of like, why do you guys think that's a better leadership structure than say, kind of really having those structured silos and those kind of hierarchies in leadership style?
I think it just happened organically for us. First of all, it's a small team and we wanted to keep a small team to control the burn and control the expenses, but also because we are kind of having those early hires coming in, working hand in hand. And if you trust them, they are capable, you want them to basically have the freedom of performing and doing what they do best while you are continuously communicating. So it's not like you are getting a status report at the end of the week.
Right.
You are talking with each other all day, every day. And being able to communicate on that organic, flat structure works great for us. Obviously, if you have 120 people on the team, that's a different conversation and wouldn't work as good as this structure. But for us, so far, it's working great.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that. How do you think you'll be able to scale, especially as I know you mentioned you are looking to add some people to the team and hire? How do you think you'll be able to kind of like adapt this structure as you keep going?
I think a lot of it comes down to trusting the people to do what they're doing. And even if you start adding layer in between, you are understanding and everyone is understanding why is this layer added, how can it help the team, how it can move forward. And at the end of the day, it's an open door policy. Anyone can talk with anyone without having to go through a certain system. Even when you start adding certain layers and adding more people to the organization, being able to having this kind of open door policy and clear and open communication, I think it ends up translating into higher productivity and higher value add to the organization.
And I think we just have time for one last question. So Thinking of where you guys are now, you guys just started shipping out orders a couple of months ago. Like, what is the future like? Like, what's the rest of the year, next year? Like, kind of what are you envisioning for the next couple of years for the company?
Yeah. So as we continue to grow the team, expand our HQ, get more space, deliver units, and start hopefully catching up with all that demand from a production standpoint, expand into other product lines like we mentioned. We have a couple of things in the pipeline, but the ones I can speak about is the version for Pickleball and for Padel in the near future, opening around, allowing us to raise that money that allows us to even move faster and expand quicker. And then, like I said, even though Pickle and Padel obviously are clear expansion points because Padel is the same size like tennis ball, Pickleball is slightly different, but our patents open up door for us to expand in even other industries and beyond the racket sports industries. Yeah.
Well, perfect. Well, that puts us right about a time, but thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been really fun.
Thanks, Becca and Dominic, again for having me. Really enjoyed it. And thanks for running a great meeting and call. Appreciate it.
And that was our conversation with Haitham. Dom, what was the lie?
The lie was that he was a competitive tennis player as a kid. His sister was actually the tennis star, and he was the one who was relegated to picking up all the balls.
I love this as a backstory because I love the thought of this is an experience you have as a kid or a teenager, and then you go and you do all this advanced schooling, and you're like, you know what? I'm gonna go back and fix that problem that annoyed me 10 years ago. I love those kind of entrepreneurs because it's not even a pain point they're dealing with every day, just something they're let me go back to that thing that was really annoying 10 years ago.
I know. He was no one else is going to suffer this again. And then he made a Tennibot, a little tennis Roomba.
I think this thing is so funny. And I know we talked about this a bit while we weren't recording, but tech has gotten so serious. It's every company is we're going to change the world and we're going to completely revolutionize this industry. And that's all good and fun. But sometimes it's fun to remember that you can apply this advanced tech computer vision and AI to a problem that's just annoying. It's not the end of the world, but it's just annoying and people will pay for it to fix it.
I think this is where tech has its best use, solving really hyper specific problems that, can every sport use this? No. But is this going to do gold in the group chat? Yes. This is such a needed tennis product. I'm yeah, this product. Yes. Forget everything else. Yes to this.
I know. And the fact that he was saying that they were super intentional about doing the patents so they can expand to other types of sports like pickleball and stuff. I can only imagine their expansion into pickleball at this because if tennis is popular right now, pickleball is somehow more popular. So it seems niche, but then you actually start thinking about it and you're this is not really that niche.
But one thing that's been interesting to see about the increasing amount of tech in tennis is how much tech is now being used in tennis. I was able to do the behind the scenes tour with IBM at both the US Open and Wimbledon this year. And there's a fully equipped data center down there, and they have those AI robots marching, okay? Those things are getting up player compatibilities. They're getting stats. They're getting random things. I remember when I was at Wimbledon, one of the guys was yeah, we're making sure that if you ask which court are British tennis players most likely going to win on, we have an answer for that. You can just pull random things. And I'm these girls are ready for something. It makes me think of what other ways can tech and sports be intertwined in this way? Because, yeah, it's really interesting now. When you go to see a tennis game, it'll tell you, yeah, Taylor Fritz is maybe 57% more likely to win this match or whatever. And it's really interesting because I guess I can't remember if it was always like that. But it's really interesting to see more technology develop in this space and how it's being used.
And I know I went to the US Open this year, and the last time I had gone was 2021. And the difference in tech was noticeable. Back in 2021, I feel you could just get kind of ball serve speed, pretty much. But this year, there's so many other things that they had. It's such a weird line in the same way that, obviously very different, but in the same vein that people hate sports betting, where it's do we need this much information? Is this really good for the sport to have this much technology, this much of other industries in the space? But at the same time, it's training and stuff like that is always continues to get more advanced. And if they can do so with technology, maybe that isn't a bad thing. But even though I did not play tennis super religiously or anything like that, it is funny to think about this problem specifically because I was like, oh yeah, I do remember doing that. That was annoying. Even though it's like not a pain point I come across all the time.
I know, there's nothing worse than picking up like hundreds of balls in the Florida heat and humidity right after like having a terrible training day. Actually, those are very humbling moments, I think. That's when you get to think back on what's going wrong or what's going right.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm thinking about, since that moment has now been taken away with the tennis Roomba, how are kids gonna like ponder their existence now on the court? Because that was I definitely used picking up balls as an excuse to just like wander for a bit.
It is interesting how they're approaching it, like how they have all these other little capabilities tied to this robot because people just asked for them and we're like, oh, this would be cool. And they were like, sure, we'll build it. So like, I'm very curious to see like what this robot will be able to do in like 2-3 years because they just launched. Like they just took sales. Obviously it's going super well so far, but like what else will this little robot be able to do 2 years from now based on like user feedback? Maybe this will be the robot we have to worry about. Not the ones from Boston Dynamics, not the robot cop dogs, the Tennibot.
No, because as soon as they put legs on these Tennibots, it's over, okay? These things running at hyper speed, yeah. With a racket, these are the girls to watch out for.
Found is hosted by myself, TechCrunch senior reporter Becca Skutak, alongside senior reporter Dominic Midori Davis. Found is produced by Maggie Stamets with editing by Kel. Our illustrator is Bryce Durbin. Found's audience development and social media is managed by Morgan Little, Alyssa Stringer, and Natalie Kreisman. TechCrunch's audio products are managed by Henry Pickavet. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week.